Okay, Twitch. I'm broadcasting 1.3, 1.5, 1.8 megabits per second, 0 drop frames. Stream quality is excellent. Okay. Still think I'm offline, but you think I've got excellent stream quality. That makes sense, Twitch. I'm sure it makes sense, but what the heck? So excuse me, anybody who's watching. I'm just trying to work out for the moment why Twitch thinks I'm offline at the same time as thinking I'm online. It's kind of confused. Okay, he now thinks I'm online. Great, thank you. Right, so I can now do some carving. And I need to get rid of that bit there tonight, at least. So I want my other glasses. Oh, Twitch has sorted itself out. Okay. Right, so we'll just start by marking roughly the edge, which is there. That way we get a stop cut. Come across the edge of the bird. And then across this, which is a branch. Now hopefully this should be fairly easy to take out. Provided I get the stop cuts in the right place and I actually stop at the stop cut. So these are going to be particularly important, or this is going to be a particularly important stop cut if I'm going to continue cutting like I just was, because I'm cutting towards it. Now as I go further down here, I'm not going to have enough room to continue to carve it that way, but we'll go down as far as I can. Good evening to anybody that's watching. Rough carving tonight. Get rid of some of the waste wood. That's around the bird. So it's another night of creating lots and lots of wood chips. And the only problem with small areas like this is you end up spending half the time making stop cuts. In fact, you end up spending more time making stop cuts than you do actually removing material. Just because it's such a small area. Bigger areas you don't spend as much time making stop cuts, but they are important, so they are worth doing. So it's the weekend, it's Saturday night. I'm on holiday for a week now, which is something that I'm really pleased about. So I don't have, I was about to say I don't have to go back to work for another week. Not strictly true, but I'm not going to be working for another week. And whilst I remember, that does mean that as I am on holiday and I'm doing things, there will not be any stream, definitely on Monday and Tuesday night. And I'm not sure about the rest of the week. We shall have to see, I'm afraid. So if you follow me on Twitter, I will be tweeting when I go live, and if I'm not going to be broadcasting, I will also tweet out a message, let you know. If you don't know the Twitter, it's at the bottom left of the screen there, but it's at Zaragonaut. It'll keep you updated with studio related things. Not a lot of tweets, but it will keep you updated. Now then, as always when I'm doing this, don't tear the wood off. I always cut it off. That way you don't damage the piece that you're working on. I think this blade is perhaps getting a little bit blunt, so we'll give it a little bit of a hone and sharpen up in a moment. Ooh. We may have a visit from a pussycat. We shall have to see. And I was about to say an unusual pussycat. She's not an unusual pussycat. She's a sort of a fairly normal pussycat. It's just unusual that she visits. Currently she sat under my desk, probably looking to try and work out how to get onto my knee, which won't be easy with the clamp that's holding down this piece and the fact that I'm working quite close to the desk. So she'll either start squeaking in a moment, meowing, or she'll completely ignore me now and just go somewhere else. Now then, I was going to give that chisel a sharpen. So what we're going to do is make a razor sharp chisel, just that little bit sharper. So this is just a polish, and effectively that's not much more than we're actually doing with this, is polishing it. It's more akin to something called honing, which just straightens out the edge, a burr on the edge, which actually occurs while you're carving. So it's not exactly a sharpening process, it does turn out to be sharper, so I'm not using a sharpening stone or anything like that, there's no need. Because I'm making a cross grain cut here, I can feel the difference. Another pussycat. Okay, this time Junior's around. Whether he's going to try and appear on stream or not, I don't know. Okay, Cleo's given up. So she's now walked off, possibly in a huff. We shall see. I will listen out for the yells of pain. If I hear that, that means that she's tried to sit on Lady Zara's knee. Oh. Yeah, she's tried to sit on Lady Zara's knee. Despite the fact that she's actually got blunt claws, they're surprisingly sharp. Okay, this bit of wood here is all attached, so we'll actually cut that off. So, unfortunately, it's not a particularly exciting part of carving, isn't this? It's a necessary part, of course, to remove waste material, but it really is just a case of creating a lot of wood chips. It can be a fun part of carving though, because it's not something where you have to take a great deal of care about how it comes off. You are concerned about protecting the piece, but the waste wood you're not bothered about, so you can sort of have a little bit of fun in respect of just sort of chiseling it off however it comes off. When you're actually working on the piece itself, of course, you have to be careful to shave, not to cut too deep or anything like that. So whilst the fun bit of the finished carving is to do it right, the fun bit about the rough carving is you can mess about as much, not mess about as much as you like, but you can mess about with the wood. Try things out, try cutting the wrong way and just being a bit careful you don't split too much of the wood. I'm just going to take my jumper off, it's getting warm in here. That's because of all the fine movements I'm making with the chisel. It does tend to make you feel rather warm. Right, so yeah, we have about ½ an inch left to cut down here. Now, whilst I often will use a gouge to remove material, I'm not doing it here. Don't really have the space to use a gouge, and it actually wouldn't save me much time anyway, because I still have to get in here with the with this flat chisel, because a gouge won't get into the corners. And I'd end up with a surface like, well, you can just sort of see this, which is slanted. I then have to go around the edge with the square chisel anyway, so it actually doesn't make a great deal of difference in this particular area here because of the size of it. Oops. I split wood then, shouldn't have done that, but it happens sometimes. Luckily it didn't go into the piece. Try to avoid cutting that way, which is along the grain. It will actually split the wood if I do that. It might be okay, or it might damage the working edge. So I'm avoiding it if I can. Still I'm splitting the wood slightly, and just really can't avoid it too much. Right, now then. So whilst I'm doing this, might as well mention a few other things, since I can carve and talk at the same time, you see, multitasking. Two things at once. Allow me to which other to stop and think about what I was going to say. You're watching carving, which is fairly obviously, I guess, but also on stream From time to time we do another 4 different things, crafts, arts, however you wish to describe them. All of which you're actually seeing pictures of in the bottom left there. The one you're seeing most of is jewellery making. Most of those images of jewellery are chainmail. Chainmail being the technique of weaving rings, not making armour. Although armour does use, or did use, chainmail techniques to produce. And that jewellery is all stuff that's been made on stream, and equally is available to be bought if you're interested in some really nice looking jewellery, as either for yourself or as gifts. They do make really nice gifts. I would say that, though it's me that's selling them, but I do think that's true. Though most of them, like you see there, are made out of aluminium, which is really shiny. Doesn't tarnish like silver, for example, so they do retain their shininess quite well. Lots of different colours and patterns available and shapes. I think most of what you see there is bracelets, but there's necklaces and anklets and other things available as well. Some of the other crafts, you'll see the black and white, which is scraper board. That's an art material which is made from porcelain clay on a backing board, which is then covered with Indian ink, making it black. What you do then is you scrape away that ink in order to reveal the white porcelain clay underneath, which is what the image is made up from. So it's sort of a monochrome, true monochrome as well. It's literally sort of white or black. It's not even shades. Any shading you see is as a result of the amount of white in a particular area, rather like newspapers used to do with the number and size of dots, determining what the picture looked like. Only here it's done with scrapes, thin scrapes or thick scrapes. You'll also see some sort of fluffy looking pictures. There's a couple of them probably of trains that appear in that sequence at some point, which is called punchcraft. It's a technique which is effectively like making a miniature rug. It is actually made in a similar way in which they make rugs, only they do it a lot faster, because instead of using one needle like punchcraft does, they use hundreds at a time, which means they can create feet of rugs in a very short period of time. Punchcraft takes a little bit longer, actually quite a lot longer, but you do get to have some really unique pictures. All of the pictures I create from scratch. If you like, I make my own patterns, make my own pictures up, and then turn them into punchcraft images like that, as you'll see them there. You will also see some pyrography. That's creating pictures using heat on wood in this particular case, although you can use heat on a number of other materials like leather, for example, or even things like gourds. Is a very interesting material to use. You can use cardboard, paper as well. They're just a little bit harder to apply pyrography to, just because, generally speaking, paper is thinner and therefore heats up really quickly. If you use thick card, for example, you can actually apply pyrography to card. It's done using, in this particular case, an electrically heated tool, which makes it a lot easier to control than trying to do it with a real flame. There are artists that do it with real flames. They use things like acetylene torches, and generally speaking they're working on really large images and usually outside. Not the sort of thing you really want to be using in a house. So what else is up there? We've had the jewellery, we've had the pyrography, we've had the punchcraft and the scraper board. Actually, that's it, because the other one's carving, which you're looking at here. There won't be any. We have done one or two other things on stream. Made a helicopter, for example, but that's not been photographed. One of these days, I will get a time lapse of that up on YouTube, but not yet. You haven't seen some of the other crafts that I do. I do engraved glass and use high-speed rotary carving tools on wood like this. Don't do it on stream because I need to use the extractor fan, which I can't because of where it's sited here in the studio. I can't get the camera in the right position, and both glass engraving and the high-speed wood carving create lots of dust, and without the extractor I wouldn't want to do that because I'd be wearing a face mask and you wouldn't be able to hear anything I say, plus I'd look silly. Well, I don't care about looking silly because it's about safety, but it probably wouldn't look very good on the stream. I also I'm an airbrush artist as well, and again that at the moment isn't something you will see on stream just because logistics wise the easel etc needs to be behind me, which is where the extractor fan is, and I can't physically get cameras there. That's as deep as I want to go, so this area here now, but you will see those at some point in the future, hopefully when I get a new studio. Right, so I'm just going to unclamp this and we'll adjust its position so that we can carry on and do this side. Now it's sort of if you see the blue thing that's underneath here, it's just a non-slip mat. Makes it a lot easier to clamp things down because it doesn't slip. Clues in the name, non-slip mat. Right, one of these days I will actually get a proper carver's vise, which will make doing this sort of thing a bit easier. What you do is it's a plate, screw it underneath the wood, and then the plate is fastened into a vise which will tip in 180 degrees, a full hemisphere, or even more, depending on the vise. See, it's very easy to just reposition the work. Now, the main safety issue with this, by the way, is getting splinters. Now that's splitting. I don't want it to do. So, I'll make some people nervous by cutting towards me. Which is a safe thing to do as long as you know what you're doing. Now it actually means that I'm probably best cutting this way, but the grain is really flat here, so it's quite possible that that isn't actually a good way to do this. Again, I'm using the flat chisel, and I can only use a gouge for so much. And here using a gouge doesn't actually offer me any advantages. Kind of looks like Twitch is being a little bit twitchy tonight. Doesn't seem to be able to decide whether I'm online or offline. Which I guess if you're hearing this you know I'm online, if you're not hearing this you have no idea. Yeah, there's definitely a slight downward angle there on the grain. Just at this edge, it's virtually straight across here, which is good. As long as I don't split too much wood off as I was just doing that on this side. I'm actually wondering whether or not to sharpen this. Yeah, I will give this chisel another sharpen. Okay, just a minute guys, I just need to assist Lady Zara with something.
You can't find the event.
Right, I'm back. Sorry Lady Zara. Maybe you've spelt it wrong. Oh, I was going to sharpen the edge of that chisel. And that should be enough. How have you done? I need to cross cut on this, otherwise it's splitting the wood. That clack or crack that you heard there was wood splitting. Not a good thing to hear, really. It's not too bad while you're doing rough cutting like this. It's not something you want to hear when you're doing fine cutting or final shaping and cutting. Is it working, Lady Zara? Okay. Now some of this area is going to get cut away, but I still don't want to accidentally cut across there if I don't have to. Well, you know, accidentally you don't have to accidentally do anything at all, but I don't want it to accidentally go across there if I can avoid it. Now the start, this right at the surface is the time when you're most likely to do it. Once you've got down a little bit, it's a lot less likely. It can still happen, especially if you split the wood, which is really possible with the wood grain as it is here, which is parallel to the wood surface. It's one of the nicest ways of carving, but it's also one of the most potentially dangerous and awkward at times as well. Dangerous as in it might damage the piece, not dangerous as in you might hurt yourself. You alright? Just needed you to log in, I guess. Oh, Ava. Get that. Oh, okay. You've got you've some extra with you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've got some. I think I'm out with quite a bit better. I got one at the time,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm the cheapest seller on there. So.
Well,
And
that.
2 pairs were sold today.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see.
Would come in useful.
A lot of people from the show yesterday might want to see the real thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I should have got them up there yesterday for you.
This wood is telling me to carve in a different direction, so I'm going to do what it's telling me to do and carve in a different direction. When you're carving the wood, especially when you're hand carving, or especially when you're hand carving, you can feel the wood. You can feel the way the wood is cutting or not cutting, and whilst lots of people will describe it as the wood talking to you, or whatever, the material talking to you. Obviously it's not speaking, but it is telling you things about when you're trying to cut it. If it's reluctant to cut, one of two things: either you're cutting it in the wrong direction, or your chisel's blunt, or both. In this particular case, I know my chisel is not blunt, so the wood was resisting the cut, and that resisting generally means you're cutting it in the wrong way. And it's generally because you're cutting it in the wrong direction for the grain of the wood. Yeah. Well, if you're watching and you're in the UK and you are interested in seeing ELO, that's the real ELO, in the UK in April when they're on tour in Yorkshire, Ladies Hour. There are some, if you haven't got tickets already on the resale market, there are, I know of, some really cheap ones at the moment. On which site? Seatwave. Check out Seatwave, Yorkshire. So I will say really cheap. That's a relative term for yellow tickets, but there are some available on the secondary market at the moment. Front row of a block. That's not front row, but of a block. Yeah, check it out if that's if the group is of interest. Of course, some of you youngsters out there are going to go yellow, but they are still quite a, well, they are, I won't say quite, they are still a famous group.
It's phenomenally famous in America.
Yeah. especially in America. They're not bad. I did, well, I used to listen to them quite a lot when I was a lad, which means they've been around a long time. But there again, these the bands in, shall we say, those days were and still are around a lot. You know, some of the big ones, Yellow, Status Quo, amongst just two I can think of off the top of my head. Were around, and yeah, of course, bands, recent bands that you see often come and go in less than a year, and you never hear from them again.
Oh, coming to 50 years.
Yeah, so Lady Zara's just told me Status Quo have been a band performing as a big group for over 50 years now. And of course, when they were, well, they still do create number ones, but back then number one actually meant millions of records. It didn't mean sort of like 10,000 or whatever it is these days, which is really small numbers compared to back then. You know, once if somebody had a number one record, or you know, platinum meant a heck of a lot. These days it's kind of like yeah, a couple of thousand and you get a gold record or something. So, and also back then, of course, the bands did spend a lot of time on things like the clubs and stage, and a lot of time touring and having to build up an audience. They didn't get an audience in you know, or they didn't rely on having an audience from a television show or something like that, or just expect to be good. They actually worked often for many years to be good, and of course they are, and they continue to be good, and to should we say reward their audiences, because they know how hard it was to get them in the first place. Oh, I wonder if Twitch thinks I'm not broadcasting anymore. Ah, no. I thought for a minute then it was going to tell me it thought I was offline. I mean, that's the first time I've ever done that, and I've actually just damaged my desk. Not really something I want it to do. Slamming a chisel into it, that's possibly blunted it slightly as well. Let's sharpen my chisel so that when I do it again, it goes in further. Yeah, so that was bad. That was most definitely bad. That was doing a stop cut, and I guess, well, I don't quite know what happened there, but it should not have happened. It actually looks like perhaps a piece of wood split off. Now I can actually see I'm possibly going to have a little bit of a problem with this when I come to try and do a finish carve because of the grain direction. Yeah, the grain direction is making it actually quite difficult to cut into this. It wants to travel along the plane of the grain. It's great for creating a smooth surface, but not when you're trying to cut into it. And now just a little bit wary of cutting on that edge. If I just cut on at an angle like that, then it won't happen again, and I can do a stop cut like that. by cutting at an angle like this, I do tend to avoid some of the problems of grain angle, because I am cutting across the grain, which means it's a lot less likely to split, for example. Bless you. One of the hard things to learn when you're doing this is kind of a good time to practice, is especially with a small flat chisel like this, is actually trying to keep your chisel under control, trying to keep it flat, for example, so you create a flat surface. Small blade chisels like this really react to the grain of the wood and the angles it moves at, causing the chisel to twist that way, and that then means that the surface you cut isn't flat, and of course sometimes that's what you're aiming to do, is create a flat surface. So whilst you're cutting away wood like this, rough wood, it can be a good chance to sort of practice chisel control, to try and keep a flat blade, try and create a smooth flat surface. The wood grain that's here is making that difficult, just generally making it difficult, not so much with the chisel control, but just the way in which the wood grain is splitting apart as you cut through it. But it's still a good chance to practice. It also helps you to understand, cutting direction can make a difference. So here, if I cut this direction, certainly this bit of the wood here, although it's really shallow, I am cutting across the grain, which is creating a smoother surface. As I move to this end here, again I'm cutting across. There's a bit in the middle here where the grain is really flat and it doesn't actually create a smooth surface when you try and cut into it. But you can try out sort of different angles and things, which is sometimes useful to learn. Like there is roughly a band across here where the grain is a little bit there, which is a technical term. If you do it right, sort of like that, you get a nice smooth surface. I haven't quite, because that's not flat, it's sloped up, but yeah, practice. Okay, stop cut before I go any further. Yep, and it falls off. Now, other than for practice, there is absolutely no point in trying for a smooth surface at this point here, just because you might get it smooth, but then you're going to have to cut it away because it's not deep enough yet. But it's if you're just doing it for practice, that's all right. And with a sharp chisel, you can actually shave the wood and create really smooth, thin slivers. One of the things to remember also while you're carving is to actually try and take too much wood off in one go. That can lead to sort of an uncontrolled amount taken off. It's okay if you're using sort of like a mallet and a chisel. You can drive a lot more wood off that way, but that does give you control, which you don't get if you're trying to use the same force with a hand chisel. Then you'd very likely not achieve the result you were after. And you see me doing this stop cut using a rolling motion with this chisel. And one of the reasons for doing that is it's easier to position the chisel doing that than trying to drive straight down. So it's sort of using it as a cross between a knife and a chisel in this particular case, but it works quite well to help you position the chisel. totally the wrong way to cut this piece of wood, but I'm not about to take it out and turn it around at the moment. It should be cut this way. Hey Desire, is that your computer that keeps beeping? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Ow. Okay, that tells me even more I'm cutting that at the wrong angle, so I'll stop. I just jabbed myself with a little bit of wood. CVSVC. What am I making? I'm making an eagle owl. It's a relief carving, so it's not a full three-dimensional object. It's sort of half on a backing plate. But it's of an eagle owl. An eagle owl is an owl. It stands about, or this one in particular, stands about 3 feet tall with a 6-foot wingspan. So it's a rather large bird. So all I'm doing at the moment is just rough cutting the outline. All of this is waste wood around the outside, and then once this is all carved away, we then shape the bird in the middle. Thank you very much. That was not the right way to cut wood. That was splitting the wood, and that's not what I should have been doing. I'm starting to do that again. I'm getting, this edge is getting close down to that side height of that particular piece of wood there, and as it does it, because of the wood plane and the grain of the wood, it's tending to split, and I've got to be careful not to let it do that. Because if I do, I have a danger of splitting all of the wood surface away. Which would then destroy the piece of wood, and I'd have to start again. Yeah, that kind of is an understatement. CSSVC, CVSVC. That's quite an awkward name to say. The main reason though is I was about to say wood doesn't grow on trees. Sort of true, really. It grows in trees, but it's not particularly cheap to get a decent block of wood. You know, You make mistakes sometimes, and things like that happen. So I mean, if they do, you just learn from it and move on. But obviously, it's not something that you actually want to happen. At this point, I really should turn this piece of wood around, but it's I should carve onto it this way, and I'm in a little bit of an awkward position to do so, but I haven't really got a clamp which I can use to actually clamp it down properly if I do turn it around. So I am working in a slightly awkward position here. I'm also getting wood shavings all over the floor. Because of the actual angle of the wood grain, I'm also having to work it at in a slightly odd way, carving it at an angle, at a slope, rather than flat as I would often do, because otherwise things like that, the wood splits off. That is wood splitting, and you hear the crack. That crack is wrong. So I'm having to carve across the grain in an odd sort of way than I would normally do. Thank you very much for following, that's very kind of you. Doing it again, look, splitting wood. I should, well, I do know better. I won't say I should know better, I do know better. But I'm not too bad, because I've got about a quarter of an inch more wood to go down. So I'm not as concerned as I would be as I get lower about splitting wood, but I still shouldn't really do it. A, because you get into bad habits, but B, it's kind of demonstrating on stream wood carving, so I ought to do it properly. Yeah, when you start a piece like this, you end up turning a lot of it into just wood shavings. At least 50% of the wood in this particular case is going into just shavings. Great if you need kindling for a fire, otherwise not a lot else you can do with them. The less that goes on the floor, the less I have to pick up afterwards. I don't think I'm going to be too successful about the stuff going on the floor bit though. It obviously varies depending on the size and the complexity of the object, but something about this sort of size takes me about 30 hours to complete, so that's about 15 streams. Depends on depends on the size and the complexity, and whether I've done something like that before, so I've got an idea what it is that I'm doing. This one is potentially a little bit easier in that I've got nice wide open working spaces. The last one I did was a dragon, and I wrapped the tail around itself, leaving some really small spaces to carving, and that was quite difficult and time consuming because of that. So this one hopefully will be a lot easier to carve because of the open spaces that are around it. I can get my chisel or the chisels in and get at the areas that I need to get at. Plus there isn't a lot of complex shapes on this particular bird. It's got its wings furled. It's just, the most complex shape is probably going to be the feet with the talons and the beak. Wow. Is that wow because of the 30 hours? I think there are a lot of people that think some of these things like this, I mean, I suppose there could be some carvers who can do it faster. It's all down to skill after all, and speed comes with skill. I'm a relative beginner at carving, which makes a difference, but it is surprising just how long handcrafted things take. Seems hard. I guess it's not fantastically difficult to cut wood, and I would say anybody can jam a chisel into a piece of wood and cut something out of it. Cutting cutting it right so you don't you don't damage the wood, so the wood is smooth and flat and things like that, or curved, obviously depending on what you're carving. That's that takes practice and skill, and speed comes with skill, and trying to learning to understand what it is about the wood that makes a good cut and a bad cut. Like if I'm cutting it this way, I'll quickly learn, or I'll quickly realise I'm cutting it the wrong way, which is why I'm cutting on this way. The rest is like anything else. As an artist, for example, you need to be able to see the shape, to be able to draw the shape, and carving's somewhat similar. I've got to be able to shape the bird in a realistic way. Well, that's practice. I've never carved a bird before, so this is the first time I've tried it. The nearest thing, as I say, is a dragon, which I did last. But it's kind of weird in that as I'm doing this, I don't think of it as being hard, because I've got an idea what I'm doing or what I'm trying to do, I guess, and I've got some practice in doing it. I'm sure that if I'd never picked up a chisel before and I came to try and do this, it would probably look really hard. But I suppose that's part of the skill as well, is making it look easy. Really hard to carve on from the edge. You're usually best carving off if you can, but carefully, because you split the edge if you're not careful. But carving onto the edge is quite difficult, because placing the chisel on the edge in the right place is the awkward bit. I need to carve that edge this way. I really need to turn this piece around, but I don't want to do that for a few minutes. Which is why I'm taking little tiny cuts like this. More or less just shaving the wood at this point. The wood grain is the challenge on this particular piece, or is a challenge on this particular piece. It's in the perfect direction, is a wood grain, but for carving, or for the finished piece should I say, but for carving that makes it awkward. You're always best cutting across the grain with a chisel rather than along it, and I'm trying to make this flat and the grain is flat, which means if I try and cut along it, that's when it tends to split. But in terms of so it's bad for carving in a way, but it's great because with a vertical grain like this, for the owl, it will have a really nice smooth surface. Now I know owls have feathers, and feathers mean it wouldn't be a smooth surface, but I'm not putting feathers on it. 10 o'clock. Okay, I think ideally I need to turn this wood around and have it so I can cut in that direction, which is going to be a little bit awkward to do, and I normally finish at 10 o'clock, which UK time, which is about now, so rather than turn it around to do a couple of minutes cutting, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that's it for tonight, and I'll set it up tomorrow, because I should be streaming tomorrow. I'll set it up tomorrow the other way around, so I can cut this this surface here, and then I can work on flattening that surface out before I flatten out the rest to take it down to the background level. With a bit of luck I might get through that on tomorrow's stream before we start to cut the body of the eagle owl itself. But as I say, that's it for tonight. I'm going to say thank you to everybody that's watching, and anybody that followed this evening, thank you very much for doing that. Moobot's already pointed out the shop, but I do encourage anybody to take a look at the chainmail, which is jewellery, not armour. That's available in the shop there. And follow me on Twitch or Twitter, either. I think Twitter's probably more reliable for notice of when I go live on stream, or if I can't go live, I will sometimes, usually, post that information on Twitter. But if you don't want to follow, that's okay. I should be, hopefully, on tomorrow night when I am broadcasting. I broadcast from about 8 PM UK time. That's 2000 hours UTC or GMT. They are both the same, or as I mentioned about 2 hours ago. Thank you all, and I hope I'll see you in the studio in the future. Bye for now.